And this is, let me start recording actually.
Good
Record
idea.
on this computer. This is Male Entrepreneur Podcast, episode number 135. And we are live in 3, 2. All right. Welcome back to the Male Entrepreneur, the podcast for men who win with Purdeep Sangha. Purdeep, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing awesome, man. I'm wearing my hashtag Men Who Win shirt, so I'm doing pretty good.
Awesome. So let's just jump into this week's episode. It's very sexist. You said you wanted to do a show, a show on how to be a better businessman. What do you mean by that?
Oh yeah, wow. You know what? This is just going down an interesting path here. It's funny you mentioned that. So let's just on a side note. I was talking to a gentleman that was trying to pitch me on his services when it comes to what I do, and he said, "You know what? You just work specifically with men. You don't work with women." I said, "Yeah." Well, how do you think that's going to come across to the market? And he's trying to pitch me on branding and marketing and so forth. And he basically said, well, you know what? We can work your brand in a way that it's more neutral. And I said, you just lost me right there. I don't want to be neutral because I do work with men. There's nothing wrong with working with men, just like there's people out there that work specifically with women. It has nothing to do with women or being against women or disempowering women. This is specifically because there's a need for men, and I have the skills and knowledge and the tools to be able to help them. But it's so interesting to see how neutralized society has become, where you can't even say the word businessman, and you can't even say that you're working specifically with men. There's so many men afraid of being men. That's why this show exists, and I'm going to keep doing this. I don't care what publicity or media comes after me, because the stuff that we talk about here is all about helping men live better lives so the women in their lives can be happier as well.
So you're from Canada. I don't know if you remember this. There was a time where somebody in the audience was talking to Justin Trudeau and they said, "Thank you for doing what you do for mankind." And he says, "I like to say people kind."
That's what gets to me, man. There are and it's Justin Trudeau, right? Like I'm not, well, I shouldn't say that, but well, maybe I should. He's not a type of guy that I would consider very masculine or has that ability. I think he blows like the wind. He's just all over the place. He's a puppet. I don't think he's got the balls to be able to do what he does. I'd like to see a blend between, somewhere where Trump is and somewhere where Trudeau is, someone that has balls, but someone has brains too, and kind of combine the two. Um, but you know what? If my one piece of advice out there is for you guys, I know this is happening, and it might not be you particularly, but there's people in your life, guys in your life, that feel like they can't be men, that they can't step up for themselves, they can't step up for their family, they can't, because they feel like they are just in this twilight zone that, you know what, it's bad to be men, it's bad to be strong men. It's not. Be strong, and that's what we're going to talk about here today in terms of how to be a better businessman or the complete businessman.
So one thing before we jump into it, you were talking about narrowing down your niche and cutting off half of the market. When it comes to coaching and that type of consultants and stuff like that, women are a lot more apt to reach out and say, "Hey, I need some help."
Mm-hmm.
And men don't usually want to admit that you need help. So maybe not for the, "Oh, you might offend people," but, "Oh, you're going after the segment of the market that is the hardest to get them to admit that they actually need help." I might see it from that point of view.
Yeah, you know what? It's a killer. I can tell you, my colleagues that are doing somewhat similar, their expertise is not on men. They do general expertise. They 80% of their clients are women, and they are like literally when they go out for a marketing campaign or a product campaign, they're just killing it because these women they just jump on it. And for me, it's a little bit tougher. It is a tough sell. It's not an easy one for guys. I'm telling you, like when it comes to working with men, it is not easy. Because a lot of guys don't admit to themselves that they need the help. And that's the toughest thing, right? For us as men to suck up that, okay, we're not doing well on our own and we need help from someone else, or at least guidance from someone else. And so admitting it to themselves is the first hurdle, and then asking for it. I know that there's guys that are following me right now that have been following me for years or whatever it is, for however long, because they've come to me at some point, that have finally said to themselves, okay, I've worked up enough confidence or courage to ask Purdeep for help because they felt in some way, shape, or form that they were going to be or feel demeaned, or they're gonna feel less of themselves for asking for help. There is none of that. There is no shame, as my grandfather used to say. You know what? There is no pride in suffering. There is zero pride in suffering. And so if you're out there, I know that whether you're following this stuff or not, there's always help out there for you. So I'm going down a little bit of a tangent, but it's important because as businessmen, I see this a lot too. Is more businessmen would rather invest in their business than invest in themselves a lot of times, and so they'll spend X amount on sales or marketing campaigns or whatever it is rather than themselves.
Mhm. And I think it actually kind of ties into this week's topic, because I've noticed that the best businessmen out there are the ones that aren't afraid to ask for help. They're the ones that are in a mastermind group, and every month they have the chance to ask for help, or they're the ones that were smart enough to go out and get a coach for the thing that they needed help with, and they aren't afraid to ask for help. What are some other, I guess, personality traits or some other key identifying factors to someone who is going to be or is a better businessman?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first piece to take a look at is you have to see yourself as a business. You have to see yourself as an organization or as an entity, because you have thoughts, you have emotions, you run off systems yourself, you have processes, internal processes that you, as a human being, you are basically an organization, as I mentioned, of thoughts, energy, feelings, processes, behaviors, habits. You need to be the CEO of yourself first. And so if you actually separated yourself from yourself and you said, hey, look, I'm a CEO now and I'm observing myself as an organization, as a business. How would I improve this? What would I do differently? You know what? Would I be happy with the performance? Is the day to day process or schedule of this business actually performing effectively? Do they have that level of aptitude or skill that they need to have? Do they have that positivity? Do they radiate that energy to their clientele? If you separate yourself, you become the observer, you will look at yourself differently and say, how do I run this ship effectively? When you learn how to run yourself effectively, and I think that's the whole backbone or the story behind this episode, is that when you learn to run yourself better as a better businessman, you automatically have a better business. Automatically have a better career. So taking a look at yourself and say, I'm going to be the CEO of myself first, is the first stage, and see where you need to fine tune yourself, and then take a look at the other aspects. Another basic aspect is, as an individual, as an organization, just like your business has a unique selling proposition or USP, right? Right, as you could say, or a UVP, a unique value proposition. What's your USP as a businessman? What is the thing that you provide other people, you as a person, as a human being, that is different from every other businessman out there? If you lined yourself up with 10 other people doing something similar to you in the same business, how are you different than them? That's what you have to think about, because people buy people. I know they buy products or services, but as a businessman, the more connections you make, the more better relationships you have with people and your clients, the more money you're going to make at the end of the day. But that involves your unique selling proposition. So if you don't have one, I highly encourage you to create one if you need to. I'll give you an example. There's there's a gentleman that I know that is just funny as heck. Like, he's just the funniest guy. Like, and he's a businessman, but I would just do business with him because he just makes me laugh. Like, he's just that funny. And so I just want to be around him because I get a kick out of everything. He just makes fun of everything and it's just hilarious. That's his unique selling proposition. And it's all else being equal, I will choose him over anybody else just because I like being around him. And so take a look at your unique selling proposition. That's one big thing I think is stands out for me, Nathan, because you have to be different these days because there's so much out there.
I want to kind of take it back a step to something that you were talking about just a second ago. Uh, it seems like a lot of people, not just in business, but just in society, in politics, in everyday life, a lot of people are expecting the world to change. They're expecting things to get better when the world changes. And I think in business too, we focus on how can we make our business better. But you brought up something about trying to make yourself better, trying to figure out what you can do to better yourself. You said a lot of people invest in their business without investing in themselves. It seems like that's kind of like the spirit of the day, is expecting the world to get better without having to focus on making ourselves better. And I kind of want to talk to you about what are some of the things that you see that guys that are like, yeah, that's spot on, I realize I need to start working on myself. What are some of the most common things that you see out there that guys are seeing the best return on their investment when it comes to trying to make themselves better?
Yeah, a really good question. The first one is their leadership ability, because I think that's one thing as a businessman. I know a lot of business guys out there that are very successful, make a lot of money, and they're trying to make more money, but they're kind of at a plateau and they can't understand why. It's because their leadership skills aren't there. So they've either got a product or a service and it's gone to a certain level, it's had some certain success. But in order to grow past that point, you have to be a better leader. You need to be able to create other leaders within your organization. You need to be able to drive strategically in terms of, how you approach relationships with your strategic partners. All of that requires leadership skills. So within leadership skills, we're talking about things in terms of influence. We're talking about communication. We're talking about emotional mastery. How do you master your own emotions, but also learn how to impact and affect other people's emotions as well when it comes to communication. So leadership is the big one. I know in the executive corporate world, leadership is big because they spend big money on training executives on leadership skills. What does it mean to be a leader? It includes being authentic, honest communication, transparency, all of this other great hoopla stuff. They don't teach them the core aspects of mastering their internal selves in terms of their own thought patterns. They don't teach them the how to manage their own emotions, for example. How do you actually successfully influence other people's emotions? So I think there's a gap there, but at least in the corporate world, they actually talk about leadership. In the corporate world, they actually invest in leadership and they actually invest in it very heavily. In the entrepreneurial sector, they don't invest very much in leadership. So if I was to go into the corporate world, I could easily get contracts from that standpoint when it comes to leadership, because it's something that's talked about readily. If I went into the entrepreneurial world and talked about that, people can be like, what are you talking about? Leadership. I need better marketing. I need better sales. I need all this stuff, without realizing that all of that comes with better leadership. If you don't have the right leadership on board, whether it's within yourself or your team members, you're going to fall short. So it's taking that one step further. It's being, I would say, the best leader you can as yourself, but also training other people how to be leaders. So when you become the mentor, that's really where you step it up and you actually take your business to the next level.
Have you heard of the marshmallow test?
No, depending on which marshmallow test it is.
I bet you probably have. That was a really bad open-ended question. Um,
Is that
they,
the one that sticks and you're trying to create stuff?
no, they did a test where they told kids, you can have this marshmallow, but you have to wait a certain amount of time to eat it. And the kids that couldn't wait to eat the marshmallow, they couldn't delay the gratification. They ended up doing a lot worse in life. They followed these kids years later into life. And the kids that could put off eating the marshmallow and delay the gratification ended up being a lot more successful in life. And one of the things, especially for entrepreneurs, that I see is people that just give up too quickly. They try and it doesn't work out in 6 months. And so they jump on a new idea. And then 6 months later, they jump on a new idea. And I think that, at least for what I've seen for being a better businessman, having that ability, we live in a society where everybody wants microwave popcorn solutions. I want to push a button and have my solution delivered. I want to turn on YouTube and watch the video I want. I want to turn on YouTube and get my instant, or turn on Facebook and get my instant dopamine drip. Being able to delay that gratification though and stick to something and uh, tough it through. Um, what are your thoughts on that as far as guys go out there? Because I see a lot of guys that just don't have that ability anymore.
It's really that they talk about self-control, because self-control is what they say is the number one factor that they've measured at certain psychological studies that have been shown to lead to a person's success, not only in their business career, but also in relationships and so forth as well. So I believe that a lot of people don't have that self-control, but I believe it stems from discipline. And I think the next generation is a little bit more challenged than we were, because they don't necessarily have that same discipline. But discipline is important. That's how you really train yourself to be able to do the things that you need. So there's persistence on one end, right? Following through until you actually make it happen and not getting sidetracked, which it's easy to do these days. And then, there's giving up too soon. I see a lot of people giving up too soon. I see a lot of people being persistent as well, but being persistent in the wrong way. So the other part of being persistent as being a good businessman is to know that the strategy or tactic or approach that they're using is not being effective. So I see a lot of guys doing the same old thing, and let's just say they're growing their business at 5%, but their goal is they want to double their revenues in the next 2 years. The math doesn't end up. It's like you're doing this, but you're not going to get that result. You got to do something differently. And as much as they know it, they don't connect the dots. So they'll continue to work harder doing the exact same thing that they've been doing before. And it's like, no, you can work hard, but you got to take a different approach. So being able to understand that is important, having the self-control, because a lot of guys will, honestly, they will give it 110% until they burn out if they have to. But you don't have to burn out, because if you're doing it the right way, you'll get the results that you're looking for. You don't have to spend your evenings, weekends sweating your balls off, just doing everything and not seeing the results. You got to use the right tactics and see the process along the way, which gets to the other component that I just want to quickly bring up for being a better businessman, is to be able to solve problems. Because again, you need to have a unique value proposition. So you make money being able to deliver some kind of value. And this is the difference. And this is the analogy that I kind of use in my book. It's kind of sneak peek here. Is if you need to have a toilet put into your house, you call a plumber and you get that plumber to come in and you install the toilet. That plumber has a lot of value, has some half decent value, because they have a skill that you don't necessarily have to replace that toilet. But what ends up happening if you have a leak in a pipe somewhere in your house, you can't find it, all you know is that there's water dripping, you got a serious problem. What happens to the value of that plumber? It skyrockets. It skyrockets because that plumber can now fix a problem that you have, and you're willing to pay twice, maybe even three times as much to have fixed, because it's going to hurt you in some way, shape, or form. So when you learn to fix people's problems, you actually become that much more valuable as a businessman. So whether that's problems within your own organization or problems within someone else's organization or your strategic partners or whatever it is, you become that much more valuable. Now, here's how you step it up even to the next level. This is even better, is when you teach other people how to solve their own problems.
Then you
That's
just put yourself out of a job.
You just put yourself out of a job, but you can charge that much more. So that's why you see a lot of people right now, coaches for coaches, right? Coaches training other coaches, for example. Or I know a doctor, for example, he's from South America. He's a surgeon. He makes twice as much teaching other surgeons how to be better surgeons.
Right.
So when you learn or when you can teach other people how to solve their own problems, you become that much more valuable. So there's a hierarchy there when it comes to being a better businessman.
Okay. So a lot to think about. I'm going to add this. A lot of times we get stuck inside of the picture and it's hard to see the whole picture when we're inside the frame. I like to think about it as trying to read the ingredients of something while you're stuck inside the bottle. You can't read the ingredients because they're backwards. But having somebody else that you can reach out to and be like, hey, help me with this. I'm stuck inside the frame. I can't see the whole picture. You're you're not biased, you're not emotionally attached to this, and you can see it probably with a lot more clarity than I can. So having, you brought up coaches, even coaches need coaches. Having somebody that you can say, hey, can you look at this and can you help me see what I'm missing? I think that also is something that can make you a better businessman. And
Mhm.
not a not a direct plug, but that is something that you help people with, isn't it?
Yeah, that's my area of expertise. This is what I do. I help businessmen be better businessmen. I absolutely love it because I spent and this isn't a pitch. This is just kind of me sharing because I'm absolutely passionate about it. I've been doing this. I spent 2 decades really studying what it means to be a better businessman and better man and as a general. So I'm passionate about helping people because it's the little things, Nathan. It's like when you go and you see someone's copy on a page, just changing a word here or there can have a dramatic difference on how their potential prospects are looking and actually saying, oh, look, this is an awesome product or service based on just changing a couple sentences. This is the same thing here. By having a couple of tweaks in terms of how a man thinks can actually have a massive impact in terms of their ability to be a better business person, make more money, have a better career, whatever it is. I'm just fired up about it, man. I love it.
So if people want to talk to you about that, how is the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, I'm on vacation. No, I'm just kidding here. You can call me at or text me at 888-210-5566. We have this brand new text line that we've opened up. We're absolutely loving it. So it's an easy way for you to get a hold of us and get a hold of me. And it's an easy way for me to respond back to you. So it's 888-210-5566. More than happy to chat with you.
Awesome. Pretty, another fantastic episode. If people want to check out more episodes of the podcast, where's the best place to go?
YouTubeformen.com and mailpodcast.com.
Awesome. All right, man. Until next time, we will catch you later.
Yeah, you and I are going to be recording episodes for a little while there, so I'll be waiting.
Okay. Awesome, man. And have a good vacation.
Yeah, thanks, man.